Everybody, welcome. We're in the middle of a series called A Man After God's Own Heart, the life of David in the Bible. And today we're going to 2 Samuel chapter number 11. We've just been making our way through the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel in chapter order, starting, I think it was back in 1st Samuel 16, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 14, I don't remember. Anyhow, here we are in 2nd Samuel 11, and we're coming to probably one of the most infamous stories about the life of David, that of David and Bathsheba. And we want to point out throughout this story where he made some mistakes and went wrong. So turn your Bibles with me, if you can, to 2 Samuel chapter number 11, and you can read along with me as I go verse by verse. And it came to pass, after the year was expired. And this is some military victories that we learned about yesterday in chapter number 10. And now the year is over. At the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And so therein lies the problem, okay? It's the time when kings go forth to battle. Is David a king? Yes, he is. So at the time when kings go forth to battle, what should David be doing? Going forth to battle. But what does he do instead? David sent Joab. So David sent someone to do a job that he ought to have done himself. Now, there's nothing wrong with delegating, and anyone in leadership has to delegate. If anything is going to get done of any significance, then yes, we have to hand off work that can be done by others to others to get done. And Joab is a capable and competent general, and so David trusts him. But David should have gone to battle with his men and with his people. And it's underlined here at the end of the verse when it says, but David tarried still at Jerusalem. So the first thing we notice is David wasn't where he was supposed to be when he was supposed to be there. That's part of the trouble. A lot of times when you and I find ourselves in a situation we shouldn't be in, we can ask ourselves, is this where I'm supposed to be right now? A lot of times we knock off a responsibility and go do something else, and in the process we find ourselves somewhere we shouldn't be when we shouldn't be there. Nothing wrong with being in Jerusalem. That's his city. Nothing wrong with being at home. That's where he abides. But at this particular time, he should not have been home. He should have been on the battlefield. And it came to pass in an evening tide, so one particular evening, that David arose from off his bed. Now that's an interesting statement, isn't it? Why is David, the king of Israel, just laying around in the evening in bed? He ought to be doing something productive with his time. So there is another lesson. You may have heard the old saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And David here, in his idleness, finds himself tempted. He walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. So he sees the neighbor lady over there, and she's on her rooftop, and it's evening, and she's getting a bath, and it's a beautiful woman, and of course we know her to be Bathsheba. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? So this is a polite way for this servant to tell David, David, you don't have a right to this woman. The woman you're describing is another man's wife, and you don't have a right to her. So already there's three problems. Problem number one, when David was supposed to go off to war, he didn't go. Problem number two, he's laying around his house idle with nothing to do but get in trouble. Number three, he's asking about a woman that he doesn't have any right to have. That's that 9th commandment, or 10th commandment rather, thou shalt not covet. Verse 4, and David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness. and she returned unto her house. So there it is, the act of adultery in 2 Samuel 11, verse 4. David took another man's wife and had physical relations with her and sent her home. Verse 5, here's a consequence of his sin. The woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child. So here's the thing. We know that the gestational period of a human being is 9 months, give or take. And so if her husband does the math when this baby's born, he's going to say, wait a minute, I was in battle during that period of time. So you must have run around on me. So David tries to cover this up. Verse 6, David sent to Joab, saying, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. By the way, Uriah is listed in the mighty men of David. David had, I think there are 43 mighty men listed. I could be wrong about that figure. But Uriah is one of them. So he's one of his choice men. And so he tells Joab, hey, send Uriah to me. And when Uriah was coming to him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. So David is trying to cover up why he's asked for Uriah to come. He thinks he's bringing him in to ask him how things are going on the battlefield. And David said to Uriah, go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. So now David, he's getting real slick here. He's basically giving Uriah a leave of absence from the battlefield. Why don't you go home? Why don't you get a good shower, get some rest, and here's some food for you. I want you to have a nice supper. But look at Uriah in verse 9. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his own house. The reason Uriah does this is because his brothers are at war, and he's not going to take advantage of this rest and recreation leave. He's got too much integrity for that. That's quite ironic, isn't it? And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down unto his house, David said unto Uriah, camest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down into thine house? And Uriah said unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house to eat and to drink, and to lie with my wife? As thou livest and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing. And there's the integrity of Uriah on display. He said, while my general and all of my fellow soldiers are at war, I'm not going to go and have a big supper and get a nice shower and enjoy the company of my wife. I'm not going to do that. Now, this sounds an awful lot like David used to sound, isn't it? But in this particular phase of his life, David's struggling and he's not doing well. Verse 12, and David said to Uriah, tarry here today also, and tomorrow I'll let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. So David holds him for another day. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. So David keeps him around one more day, and he gets him drunk. How about that? What a terrible thing to do. So that he'll then give in and go down and spend the night with his wife. But Uriah won't go. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. How about that? David sends the very orders that are going to take Uriah's life by his own hand. What a dirty, rotten, dastardly, terrible thing for David to do. He types up this letter, the secretary, whoever does, and puts it in a sealed envelope, gives it to Uriah, and says, give these orders to Joab. And in his own hand, Uriah is carrying the orders that are going to end up taking his life. And it came to pass when Joab observed the city that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. And so we see that Joab follows through on the orders that David had given him, and he puts Uriah in this hot battle where the enemy had some strong soldiers, and Uriah ends up being killed. Then Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war, and charged the messenger, saying, When thou hast made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, and if so be that the king's wrath arise, and he say unto thee, Wherefore approached ye so nigh unto the city when ye did fight? Knew ye not that they would shoot from the wall? Who smote Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast a piece of millstone upon him from the wall, that he died in Thebez? Why went ye nigh the wall? Then say thou, Thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. So Joab knows what David's trying to do here. He knows that he's trying to get Uriah killed. The best way for Joab to do that is to approach the city in this manner. So when he sends the messenger to tell David how the battle is going, he says, when you tell him what we did, he might get angry and start asking you, why did you go so closely to the walled city when you knew that they were going to shoot you? And so after he asks you that, just say, Uriah the Hittite is dead also, so that David gets the message as to why Joab made the decision that he did. So the messenger went and came and showed David all that Joab had sent him for. And the messenger said unto David, Surely the men prevailed against us, and came out unto us into the field. And we were upon them, even unto the entering of the gate. And the shooters shot from off the wall upon thy servants, and some of the king's servants be dead. And thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. Then David said unto the messenger, This shalt thou say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city, and overthrow it, and encourage thou him. So David now sends the messenger back to Joab and says, Hey, tell Joab, don't be discouraged. Both sides in a war lose some men. I want you to be encouraged. You're going to do better. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she mourned for her husband. So not only has David taken Bathsheba's integrity by causing her to come and sleep with him, now he's also taken the life of her husband. What a terrible, rotten thing to do. And after she's finished mourning, verse 27, when the mourning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. God was not at all happy with David and with how all of this turned out, with the choices that he made. And so God is going to judge David very harshly for his decisions. And I'll tell you, all of this could have been avoided with one simple decision. David should have went to work when it was time to go to work. If he'd have just gone to the battlefield, none of this would have happened, because he would have been on the battlefield with Uriah, far away from Bathsheba. And when he would have come back from the battlefield, so would have Uriah, and Uriah would have been there to be able to watch over and protect his wife. So the timing of David's presence is the biggest downfall in this story for him. Had he been where he was supposed to be, when he was supposed to be there, he never would have made this mistake. Even though tempted, even though lusting in his heart, even though desiring her, he wouldn't have allowed himself the opportunity. And that's what the devil's waiting for. The devil knows our weaknesses. He knows our besetting sins. He knows the lusts that our flesh possess. And he's just waiting to give us opportunity. And a lot of people fall when that opportunity presents itself, and there's nothing to stop them from walking in that direction. All right, terrible story, terrible time. And here on out, we're going to start seeing some really bad things happen in the life of David. So tomorrow, we'll be there in chapter number 12 of 2 Samuel. Feel free to read ahead and see what lies in store for us. Thanks so much for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.